strategy. Okay.
Starting this morning with using the close reading strategy to look at a passage called segregation. We've used the close reading strategy before, but it's been a little while since we did that. So if we come back to this sheet right here, this is what we used before to help us out and guide us through that. So I thought it might be good for us to use that same paper again, just so it refreshed our memories on what we were supposed to do. So if we take a look first, we'll need to put the title. What's the title of the passage that we're going to be using? Segregation. So let's put that right there at the top so that we can be ready to roll. The next thing that we have to do for close reading is decide the purpose of this text is to do what. So what would be the purpose of reading this passage about segregation? Max, can you help me? To inform. So if we think about the three different pieces of purpose for reading, inform is one of them. What's another? Entertain us. What's another? To persuade us. All right. So, why do you think inform, Max?
Because this is segregation, non-fictional.
Right, so we know it's non-fictional. We know that it's non-fiction. That's a pretty good idea, that it's going to be an informational type text that we're going to be reading, isn't it? So in knowing that it's informational text, what are some text features that you already see in the passage of segregation? What do you see, Alexis? I see some keywords in there too. Can you tell us a keyword?
Civil rights.
Civil rights. What does that mean? What does it say in that box?
Rights that everyone should have.
All right, so rights that everyone should have are civil rights. Another keyword that's in there, Anna? What's legal mean?
Allowed by law.
Something that is allowed by the law. So if we think back for just a second, just knowing those two words right here, it makes me think back to what we were talking about over here with our essential question. We had that big, compelling question of how do people overcome hardships and become American citizens who exemplify the American spirit. We've been working on that question for quite a few weeks before break and now that we're coming back from break. We've already looked at then a supporting question of what was slavery, and we have a pretty good idea of what that was and how that happened. Then we started looking at why was our country divided during the Civil War. We're at the third question now, that's a supporting question, and we've been looking at what ways were African Americans oppressed after the Civil War, and how did they overcome this oppression. So there were three main ways that African Americans were oppressed. Talk to a neighbor right now about how that was. What were those oppressions?
How was that correction? Correction would mean
What's a
that
oppression?
there's something that I said. A correction. Correct. Okay, correct.
All right, my friends, we need three different oppressions. I'm going to draw a stick to see if somebody can tell me an oppression here. Judge is not here today, so let's pick someone else. Leanne, can you tell me one oppression? Segregation was a way that they were oppressed. Bryden, what's another way?
Sharecropping.
Sharecropping was another way. And Erica, I need a third way. Do you remember what the last one was? Voting rights. You're exactly right. So when we talk about oppression, what does oppression mean? We looked up that word in the dictionary to try and figure that out. Who remembers, what does oppression mean? Anna?
It means like treating people not how you
Treating people how you wouldn't want to be treated. Giving them a hardship, right? You're exactly right. So we know that segregation is one of those. So we're going to start focusing in on that oppression to see if we can learn just a little bit more about it. So as Max told us, the purpose of this story is to inform us about that oppression. All right, so let's put that in there next. Inform us about the oppression of segregation. So now, we're going to be looking at the segregation oppression. I have a question first. I was thinking about this as you were writing. Was oppression only happening right now? Or has oppression to African Americans happened before this? Before this. You all said that in unison like you knew it, just like that. What was the oppression that was happening, Erica? Segregation starting now. I'm thinking before segregation. Wyatt, what are you thinking? Slavery. All right, so what made slavery stop? What made that oppression stop? Kaylin?
13th Amendment.
The 13th Amendment. What did the 13th Amendment say?
No more slavery.
No more slavery.
Just like that.
Just like that. Did it work?
No.
Okay. Some say yes, some say no. All right. So what was even before the 13th Amendment? Allison?
The Emancipation Proclamation.
Okay, so the Emancipation Proclamation, what was that?
It was a speech that Abraham Lincoln
Yeah, so Abraham Lincoln gave this speech to try and free slaves. Did that work?
No.
No. So what did he have to do? Kaylin?
The 13th Amendment.
The 13th Amendment. And that made it a law. So when it made it a law, it changed a really, really important document. On the count of three, tell me that document. 1, 2, 3.
The Constitution.
So now we have the Constitution that says there can be no more slavery. So the people in the South like that so much? No. So that's why they started doing oppressions in different ways. There was slavery, as you said, Wyatt, before that. Now they're thinking of other ways. One being segregation. So our very first thing that it says that we need to do is to look for our title. What's the main topic or title about in this passage? What would be the title, Jordan? Segregation. So highlight segregation, circle it, however you'd like to do to show that that is our topic today that we are going to be reading about. So that's our green. Any ideas why we're choosing that to be green? Can you think of any reasons why that would be? Because it's our topic, exactly. What else do we use when we take our topic and make it be a green, Allison?
Everything in the passage is going to be about.
You got everything in the whole passage then should relate back to that topic of segregation. So we want to first of all always look at what the topic is to get our mind focused in on that. Which probably, I'm going to guess, helped Max think that that's probably what's going to inform us about segregation, is knowing that that's the topic of what the title of this passage is. Am I correct in saying that? All right. So the next thing that it says to do is to underline the topic sentence in each paragraph in yellow. So we're going to need to read the passages, the paragraphs, and decide what's going to be the topic sentence. Where do topic sentences usually, where are they usually located at in a paragraph? Emma, can you help me?
The beginning sentence or the last
beginning or ending. So let's take a look as we read this one together, what those are going to be. Now before we start reading paragraphs, we were talking about how there were other text features that were in here. Let's check those out. We checked out the keywords. What's another text feature that there is, Kaylin?
Questions.
There are questions in there. Where are the questions at?
The bottom.
At the bottom. So what's a good strategy to use when you're reading a nonfiction passage and you know you're going to need to answer some questions that go with it? What should you do? Before you start reading the passage, what do you think we should do?
Read the questions.
Let's read the questions together. Number 1, what were 2 problems African Americans had when slavery ended? Okay. Number 2, what does segregation mean? Number 3, slavery ended in 1865. Buses in Montgomery, Alabama were segregated until 1955. How many years had passed? So those are our questions that we have that we're going to be answering as we do this today. So now we have those in our mind of that's what we're looking for to help us focus too. So we know it's on segregation. We know we're going to need to answer these questions. We've had the questions, we've had the keywords, we've had the topic. I see another text feature. Anna? The caption of the picture. Read it with me. Before the civil rights movement, this man had to get a drink of water from a can. Okay? So when you take a look at that picture closely, right over here, there's part of a sign in there. Can anybody make out anything that's on that sign? Allison, what do you see?
The first word, it looks like it would be white.
The first word does look like it would be white. The W is cut off, but the rest of it's there, isn't it? Leanne, what do you see? That's okay. Whatever you're thinking. Macy, you have an idea?
The third word looks like it would be colored.
The third word looks like it's going to be colored. The beginning of it is cut off, but there's part of it at the end that makes it think that it could be colored. Alexis, do you have an idea on the other words?
I was going to say that the W and the O is cut off and it looks like it's going to be white.
It does look like it's going to be women on both of them. So white women, colored women maybe? Yeah. Now, what if we really want to know what that sign says? Anybody have an idea how we could figure it out? What could we do? Hank,
The internet.
we could look on the internet, couldn't we? See if we could find this picture on there. See, where are some sites that might be good sites to look at? We have one that we usually use to go look for historical pictures to help us out. Haley, do you remember what that is?
Google.
We could Google something, that's true, but I'm looking for a site that's a search engine. The Library of Congress, Hayden, I agree with you. I think that would be a good place to look. And our Symbaloo is just a keeper of all those sites. So Library of Congress on there could help us find it though. Okay, so that's like the search engine to get us there. So you're right. So look at the text features that are going to help us now. Now we're ready to read a paragraph. How will we know where to stop reading if we're reading a paragraph to find the topic sentence? Alexis.
Look at the sentence under, and if there's an indent, then that's where you stop.
Exactly. So we have an indent right here. We know that starts the first paragraph. There's another indent right here, which tells me that's the end of the paragraph right there, doesn't it? Read that part with me right now. Slavery in America ended in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. But then African Americans had a new set of problems. Many whites were very angry that they, slaves, had been freed. In the South, laws were passed to keep African Americans separate from whites. This is what is called segregation. Does anybody see a misprint in there as you were reading it? Allison, where was it at?
It should have been their slaves.
Yeah, many whites were very angry that,
They slaves.
yeah, there, you think would be better for that spot? Okay, let's edit them right now in this passage.
Or you could say
Yeah,
It was a
exactly.
typo.
Yep, a typo. You're exactly right.
Or they were meaning the. And they
you worked in
accidentally
there
just
too.
typed the.
All right, I just want to make sure that we were all thinking of it the same way. All right, so now we have to decide. Emma said earlier, first sentence, last sentence. I'm going to reread those. Slavery in America ended in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. Is that what this whole thing is about in here? Or is it, this is what is called segregation? What do you think? Which one do you think it would be? Dennis, do you have an idea? Anybody agree with Dennis, or are you thinking no? Okay, so I see a lot of agreement happening. So that means let's take what color? Yellow, and we are going to highlight that one as our topic sentence for that because we know it's going to be talking about what segregation was. So we have that done for the very first paragraph. We're ready to read now the second paragraph and do the same thing. And something to add before we move on. You're exactly right. Because we found that in the Addie books too, how they have a different accent to them, where they use different slang type of words because of that. Now, in an informational text, would you expect that to be? No. Yes. I agree with you. All right, so let's take a look now. Alexis told me before I had to look at where it was indented and then where it was indented again. And I know that that's where I'm going to stop for this one when we're going to decide on another topic sentence. You ready to go? Here we go. These segregation laws said that African Americans had to go to all black schools. They had to sit in the back of buses and theaters. They had to use different restrooms. African Americans were not allowed to use public swimming pools. They were not allowed to eat and drink with whites. So when we see that paragraph, if we reread the first and the last for our main idea, let's decide which one we think it's going to be. These segregation laws said that African Americans had to go to all black schools, or they were not allowed to eat and drink with whites. Which one do you think that it would be for the topic sentence? Okay. What are you thinking, Alexis? The first one. Agree? Okay. Got an agreement there. Let's do that one as our topic sentence for that. The next thing that we are ready to do is read the next one. Now, I noticed something that this author did. What did this author do in the next one? Take a look at that next paragraph. Would you call that a paragraph?
No.
Why would you not call that a paragraph? Why, Allison?
It's only like 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah, it only has 2 sentences in it. That doesn't usually make a very good paragraph. Let's read it and see what we think, right? So here we go. Other laws were passed that made it hard for African Americans to vote. This was done so African Americans could not change the segregation laws. Now, do you think that one of those is a topic sentence out of those 2? Even though it's not a great paragraph, which one of the 2 do you think would be the best? Macy?
The second.
Okay. So this was done so African Americans could not change the segregation laws. In agreement with her. Okay. So let's highlight that one, even though it's not a great paragraph. There.
Because it's only 1 sentence.
2 sentences isn't really, we know that when we're writing them, we're not going to do that, are we? So let's read the last paragraph now. African Americans tried, do I need some help? African Americans tried to get these laws changed. They tried for almost 100 years. At last, during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 1960s, African Americans began to be heard. Many other Americans joined the African Americans in the civil rights movement. They helped African Americans get unfair laws changed. The United States government made stronger laws too. The law said everyone in the United States has the same civil rights. That's a longer paragraph. Let's check it out. African Americans tried to get these laws changed. The very last one says, the law said that everyone in the United States had the same civil rights. Leanne, which one do you think? The last one. Are you in agreement with Leanne? All right. So let's take a look then. We've got some topic sentences. In those topic sentences now, if we look back to our close reading, we've done a one read on it now. We're going to now go to the next thing, which says underline 3 to 5 key words in each paragraph in red. So we will need to now do our next read, a close read of it to try and find 3 to 5 key words. Those should be our important details that really stand out. So are we going to be like highlighting whole sentences? Underlining whole sentences? No. We really want to think about that reading strategy when we determine importance is to really figure out those really bits of information that are the most pertinent to us. So, reread the very first paragraph to yourself again right now. Go. That you just underlined in that first passage that you think really stand out, that are important details?
No, we have 3 to 5.
But you mark on that you said, I'm not that I said.
All right, some words then that you had in common with a partner that you just talked with that you think are really important details. Peyton, can you give me one?
Segregation.
Segregation. Are you guys, anybody else do that one too, in agreement? Yes? All right, I agree too. Segregation is definitely one that we'll want to put on there. Kayla, what's another one?
Civil War.
Civil War. What does Civil War do?
It ended slavery.
It ended slavery, but then segregation started because of that. You're right. Another one.
Slavery.
Right. So the ending of slavery, the ending of Civil War brought new what? New what?
New problem.
New problems. Is problems in there?
Yeah.
I was thinking that it was. So they brought new problems, and those problems were segregation. Allison, do you have something else?
It ended in
1865 was the ending of that. And were you kind of proud of yourself when you read that? Were you thinking in your head, I already knew that? Was anybody thinking that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Awesome. Macy, something else?
Separate.
Separate. Ah. I think that's an important word too, because what do we know about the word separate? Segregation means to separate. You're exactly right. So if I look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I should stop. We can't have more than 5 for that paragraph, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and leave those. What if you had a different one in there? Is that okay for right now? Yeah, all right. So let's read the next paragraph to yourself again and see if you can underline. When you get done underlining in those, would you please talk to a partner again sitting next to you what you thought was the most important for the second paragraph? Go. share if you haven't had a chance to do so?
I did, you have to do 3 to 5. 3 to 5. I did sit in the back of buses here, different, not allowed to use the wall.
All right, what were some things you underlined in that one, Peyton?
Different.
Different.
Oh, and also you forgot to underline 1865 in the first one.
That goes with the Civil War there. I didn't underline that one because I already had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there. Yeah, but you're right, it did end in 1865. I agree with you.
Different.
All right, Macy?
They had to sit in the back.
Right. In the back. Looking for when that one is
Buses
there.
and theaters.
Right, theaters. Oh, back. Theaters and buses. Okay, another place that they were separated, Dennis? Yeah, exactly. Where they were eating and drinking. Where do you go to eat and drink?
Restaurants.
Right, so we know now that you think that they're meaning restaurants for that one, or lunch counters, or places like that. Haley? Any other separations? The swimming pools, yeah, that would definitely be one to do. Peyton, another one?
No, you forgot to underline different, that I said. Different restrooms.
Right? Restrooms, yeah, I was waiting for a place. So we've got buses, theaters, restrooms, swimming pools. All of those where they eat and drink for restaurants, all those had to be different and separate from each other. Let's go to the next paragraph, that short one. Reread that short one with your partner. Underline what you're thinking and compare. Go.
Oh yeah, I already have it done. African. I have some. I had one. I had 3 for the other one actually. I thought it was going to have then laws have laws made it hard.
Sharing with your partner.
You don't have to, you can make African Americans one.
So what are you thinking right now that's important in America? What was hard, though? That's a descriptor word.
It's right below everything. It's right below E.
I'm asking, well, what was hard? What would go with that? Right, the voting. They were making it hard for African Americans to vote, weren't they? Peyton.
African Americans.
African Americans, because that's who they're targeting, isn't it? Exactly. Is that what you were thinking too, Logan? I noticed you put your hand down, so there was an agreement there. Emma, did you have a different one?
Segregation laws.
Segregation laws. Okay? We're going to be learning what some of those laws were called. They had a special name, too. So we'll learn a little bit more about that a little bit later today. Allison?
Not change.
Not change, you're right. Okay, so we should probably stop there because I think we have our 5 there. Let's go to the last paragraph. Read that one on your own. Decide on 3 to 5 key details and then partner it.
1950s.
So, what was a word in there that you stood out to you as really, really important? What do you see, Haley? Laws change. So we want to change, don't we? Okay. Peyton, got another one?
The United States government.
Okay, that's 3. So take out a key in there. What about the United States government? What did they do?
Made stronger laws.
Stronger laws. So the laws changed, and the United States is enforcing those laws. So I'm just going to do the U and the S. For the U.S. was doing that too. Because we already have laws changed there. Kaylin, something else?
Civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement. When was that? When does it say, Allison?
1850s and 1860s.
Look at it closely.
100 years.
That's not 18. What is that? 1950s and 1960s. Could it be the 1850s and 1860s? Why not?
Because
What was happening then?
during that time slavery was still going on.
Exactly. That's when slavery was happening, wasn't it? Right. So I just wanted to point out to you so you made sure that you understood that you're right. When you said 100 years, it was almost 100 years later that is. Right? We're talking about
100 years.
100 years you think needs in there too. And you said the 1950s and the 1960s in there for the civil rights movement. So they were trying to get these laws changed during that time. All right, I think we have our key details now. So if we come back here, what's our next job to do? We've underlined 3 to 5 key words in the paragraph. What's our next thing to do? What's our next thing to do, Haley?
Answer the question.
We have to answer the questions. We read those questions before we even started reading today. So as we reread the paragraph together, we're going to then see if we can answer question 1, question 2, and question 3. So as we read, let's see if we can answer question 1 and put a Q1 by where in our text we can cite the evidence to help us know that that's the answer. So the question was, what were 2 problems African Americans had when slavery ended? Read with me now the paragraph. Slavery in America ended in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. But then African Americans had a new set of problems. Many whites were angry that their slaves had been freed. In the South, laws were passed to keep African Americans separate from whites. This is what is called segregation. Stopping at the end of the paragraph, is there anything in that paragraph that answers a problem that African Americans had when slavery ended? Kaylin?
Segregation.
Segregation. So let's put a Q1 by segregation. Now, the question says 2 problems. To me, segregation is 1. Let's keep reading and see if we can find the other problem. These segregation laws said that African Americans had to go to all black schools. They had to sit in the back of buses and theaters. They had to use different restrooms. African Americans were not allowed to use public swimming pools. They were not allowed to eat and drink with whites. Other laws were passed that made it hard for African Americans to vote. This was done so African Americans could not change the segregation laws. African Americans had to get these laws changed. They tried for almost 100 years. At last, during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 1960s, African Americans began to be heard. Many other Americans joined the African Americans in the civil rights movement. They helped African Americans get the unfair laws changed. The United States government made stronger laws too. The laws said everyone in the United States has the same civil rights. Talk to a partner right now. What's the second problem that African Americans have? So where would we put another Q1 to answer what were the two problems African Americans had when they ended slavery? Dennis, did you guys have another problem? Slavery's already ended. It ended in 1865. So we're talking after that. You're right, that was a problem before. But now we've got one problem being segregation. What's another problem, Anna? Voting rights. So let's go to the spot where it talks about voting. I think we even put that as a key word, a key detail, didn't we? So let's put a Q1 in that spot right there. So as we've got that in there, we now need to come up with an answer. We have talked about the race strategy this year, looking and citing evidence, and then using part of our question to actually answer it. So what would we use to start our answer, Erica?
Two problems African Americans have in slavery.
So this part right here of the question is what we would start our answer with, and then we would tell our answer with that. So let's put that in there right now. Two problems African Americans had when slavery ended were. And if we go back up to where we just put our Q1s, one is going to be segregation. I agree with you, Logan and Dennis. And the other one would be voting rights. Now, we've learned that there are actually three problems, haven't we? Does this article talk about sharecropping at all?
No.
No, so we might have to read something else to tell us a little bit more about sharecropping. But we could put segregation here. And voting here. I'll give you a minute to get that written. If we look at question number 2, we've already done a reread. Let's see if anyone can figure out what the segregation means. Where is it at? Which paragraph would you find the answer to that in? What would be the paragraph? Peyton, you see it?
Separated, but I can't find it.
Separated. Did anybody find what paragraph that's in? He's found the answer. Where is it though, Matt? The first one. I think we even underlined that as a key detail, didn't we? So let's put a Q2 by that one right there. So that answers the second question. Now again, thinking of our race strategy, what part of our question right here would we use to start our answer, Macy?
Segregation.
Segregation. means to separate, which we just put our Q2 by. Give you a chance to write that one. If you are finished, we'll look on to the next one. See if you can cite the evidence to where you'd find the third answer. If not, we'll do that here in just a second. So then the third question. Slavery ended in 1865. Buses in Montgomery, Alabama were segregated until 1955. How many years had passed? What should we do? What should we look for that, Matt?
Well, it doesn't say the right exact years, amount of years, but it says near it, and it would be in the third, third paragraph.
Okay, so in the last paragraph, about how many is it?
100
It's
years.
about 100 years. So we talked about how sometimes we estimate things too. If we wanted the exact number rather than just the about that they told in the passage, what would we do then? We want to see.
You would do 1955 minus 18.
So let's just see how close it is. What's 5 take away 5?
0.
What's 5 take away 6? Can't do it, so let's go to my next door neighbor. Make the 9 and 8. Make the 5 8. 15 take away 6. 0, 0. So about how many years?
90.
They say 90, okay? So they're saying it's about 100 years. So this one's just talking about how long the buses were segregated. Now, Caitlin, I go back to the question that you asked a couple of days ago. When you were asking Mrs. Heckert, we know how slavery ended. We know it was the 13th Amendment. We know the Civil War ended. We know that. But you were asking the other day, how did segregation stop? How did sharecropping stop? How did voting rights? How did those forms of oppression stop? Does this help you kind of get some of those answers right now?
Yes, it helps me figure out how the segregation on buses stopped.
Right, so this one they're really focusing on buses. We know that bus boycott that they're talking about here. Now, anybody think of a connection to who was involved in that bus boycott? Who was that was involved in that? Rosa Parks. She worked really, really, really closely with somebody else.
Martin Luther King Jr.
You're right, and we'll read a little bit more about that as we keep going too. So, how would I start my answer for this one? How would I start my answer for this one? For about how many years it is? What could I say for that one? Ella?
About how many years past is 100?
So, about 100 years. We're going to start with the answer first. Years past before buses were not segregated. Does that seem crazy to you? Doesn't that seem like a long time? Yeah, some people don't even live that long. So it could have been somebody's entire lifetime that this was still happening. Leanne?
Shouldn't it be years instead of year?
100 years. I would be happy to add an S to that. Thank you. Alexis?
On the page right after this, it tells about
You're exactly right. So we have some other passages that we'll be reading in our social studies packet here to use the COAST strategy to find out a little bit more about that. You're exactly right. You're looking ahead. Buses in Montgomery, Alabama So a couple different ways to do it. Still looking at part of your question to start you to then put your answer in it when you do that. And we have our Q3 up here where we labeled that here. Now I'm going back to our sheet. If I go back into our sheet right here, it says write the answer to the number of the text evidence you used to answer the questions 1, 2, and 3. We did that, so I'm making a check mark there. The next question that it asks me is, the main idea of this article is. Talk to a partner right now. What do you think the main idea of this article is?
How African Americans will How African Americans were segregated during
Okay, that's a main idea of word. Did you put it into a sentence? The main idea of this story is segregation did what?
All right. The main idea of this story. Wyatt, do you have an idea? Sure.
How would we think of the name slavery?
How do they think the name slavery and segregation is what he's asking us. Okay. So, do you remember we read the story Frindle at the very beginning of the school year?
Yeah.
How are words made?
People make them up.
People make them up. You're exactly right. And they usually have some sense or some reasoning behind them. So if we take a look at the word segregation, segregate means to separate. And that's exactly what they were doing. That's why they called it segregation. So depending on where it came from, sometimes they came from Latin words and they came from Greek words, but that's where a lot of our words came from in the dictionary. And so it was from long, long ago of when those were created to make sense to go with what they actually mean. Okay. Jordan. Who made words? People made words. Just like in the story that we had for Frindle when he was making his new word. Okay? All right, so let's come back here. I'm looking still for the main idea. The main idea of this passage, Emma? Segregation is the topic of it, but tell me a little bit more about the main idea of the entire passage. It is about segregation, and I would use that in my sentence for the main idea. Kaylin?
How segregation affected African Americans.
Okay, so the main idea is how segregation affected African Americans would be our main idea. Now, I really like how you used a word in there, and I'm going to put a little circle around it right here. Affected is what you said. Now, when you said affected, it made me think back to a story structure that authors use. We've been talking about time sequence. We've been talking about the main idea and details. We also talked about causes and effects of them. So these were causes of oppression that we're talking about and what some of those effects then of what happened to African Americans would be. When you have that one taken care of, would you please go down and mark any text features that we used in this article to help us? Any text features that you found in there? Who has a text feature that we can put a check mark by? Dennis, what'd you find? Headings. There were definitely headings in there, so let's put a check by that one. Haley.
Word box.
Word box. So I'm going to ask, what word box here, what does that do for us? How are they helpful?
Tell what it
Yeah, what the word means. Exactly right. And what do headings do for us? What do headings do, Kayla?
Tell us what you're reading about.
Yeah, what we're going to be reading about. Any other things that you saw as a text feature in there, Erica?
Photos.
Photos. What did the photo do? Exactly. It helped us visualize by showing us a picture to see what it was exactly like during segregation. Macy, another one?
Captions.
Captions. What do the captions do for us?
They told us what was going on in the picture.
Right. Told us more information about the picture in case we didn't know. And that is a true historical picture from the time period of segregation too, so we might need to know more about that. Allison.
Question and answer.
And this was a question and answer, wasn't it? It gave us some questions at the end. We had to go back and look at those to find the answers to them as we went.
Fact box.
Yep, and fact boxes were in there. Are you thinking of this one right here, Peyton? This one's not going to be a fact box. That one's going to be a word box because it tells us what the words mean in it. A fact box is if it gave a fact about, for instance, if it said oppression was happening to African Americans through segregation. That would be a fact about that. Or if it said something about voting rights and told us a little bit more about the laws and the things that went with that, that would be a fact box that went with it.
Does it have the one below photo? What's the one below?
Caption.
No, this one.
Italics.
Italics, is that the one that you're talking about? Italics is when they use that different print and they turn it on its side to show something like it really, really should stand out to you and it's really important that we read that, is what that would mean. Good question. Any other ones that you're wondering about? Otherwise, I think that you've got them all. One last one.
I think there's a chart and a table.
Chart or table. What is it showing us with a chart or a table? Where do you see that? Is it giving us any math things or things like that that was happening? No, we could probably make a chart or a table for this if we wanted to. Because when we were talking about how it took 100 years and what lasted that long, if they would have wanted to, they could have shown us some chart or table, but they didn't choose to do that in this one. Okay? Would you please, for closing today, tell your partner sitting next to you, what is one form of oppression that we learned about today? 3, 2, 1, 0. On the count of 3, tell me what that oppression was. Claire, have a seat. 1, 2, 3. We will be looking at some historical photos tomorrow. You saw one today that went with the reading. Tomorrow we'll do some investigating with a photo analysis on more segregation laws. It is time to get ready for lunch. Would you put both of those back into your social studies folder?